Hello and a very good morning in Toronto. Very good afternoon if you're in Europe. So welcome everybody to this new live session from Charge Automation. We have a very special guest here with us today, all the way from Hostfully. Fred, please say hello.
Hey everyone. Good
Great
morning,
stuff.
good afternoon.
Indeed. We're very happy to have Fred on board. We've been talking about this one for a long time. As you might remember, we actually had a cancelled session. We had to make some changes, but we got Fred back because obviously he didn't want to miss out on a charge automation session. So the big topic today, which everyone's kind of talking about, is all about basically smart upsells and damage waivers. We've done a lot of talking about upsells, but we've never really spoken about damage waivers. So it's a very interesting topic that we have in this industry. And I think let's start kicking things off by introducing ourselves, I think, for everybody who's new to the live sessions. So I'll start with myself because I'm the one talking here, but I'm Nick. I head up marketing and growth here at Charge Automation. I'm a property manager myself, and I've been at Charge Automation almost a year now. Austin, over to you.
Wait, you've been here almost a year. I've been here almost a year.
It's coming up to. It's coming up to
that. Timed. My name's Austin Bernhardt on the sales team here at Charge Automation. Been in the short-term rental industry for just over 3 years now, specializing in ID verification. That's kind of my bread and butter. And happy to talk more about everything Charge Automation.
Fantastic. And of course, we have Fred. Fred, please introduce yourself.
Fred, I'm based out of Montreal, Canada, and I'm the marketing manager over at Hostfully. I've been used to manage a property of my own, but got out of that. But now I create content and prepare reports and things like for Hostfully to help our property managers through marketing. And really excited to be here today and be on this webinar with you all.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us, Fred. Really appreciate it. Great stuff. All right, let's jump into the quick overview of the live session. So essentially, we'll be talking about basically a 25-minute discussion. We'll be going through the topics here. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, there's a conversational chat there. And of course, if you have any early bird questions, feel free to mention them straight away. And we might pick them up during the conversation. We'll see how things go. So let's crack on with things. I'm going to give a quick overview of Charge Automation. We'll make this very quick because we want to get through everything. First but foremost, we have a seamless integration with Hostfully. Of course we do. If you are a Hostfully customer, you can jump straight into using Charge Automation, no problems at all. We offer a multi-level check-in, guest ID verification. We also offer passive guest ID verification too, which is a really, really cool feature as well. Obviously, we offer upsells. That's something we're going to talk about. But the key thing with Charge Automation is that we have many payment gateways, over 160, which basically means it doesn't matter where you are globally, we probably and most likely have a payment method that works for you locally for your region. So if you're struggling to take payments where you are, Charge Automation is the ideal tool there. We also offer secure deposit collection, and that's both damage deposits and waivers, which we're going to talk about today. And of course, we offer the whole guidebook experience, FAQs, access codes, smart lock integrations, digital rental agreements, e-signatures, and much, much more. I could go on and on, but I'm going to give Fred the chance to talk about Hostfully. So over to you, Fred.
Great. So Hostfully, we're one of the industry-leading property management software out there. So we have the classic high-performance PMS, which has all the automations and the calendar sync and the owner reporting, all those types of features you need to manage your properties. On top of that, we offer the digital guidebook experience, which is a great tool to delight your guests and share information. And we also have the upsell feature built into that. And we recently announced our smart device integration. So you can connect with a bunch of different physical hardware for your properties, and the PMS handles generating unique smart codes for your doors or adjusting the thermostats. And we have a few more integrations like that coming up. So it all works together. So the PMS talks with the guidebooks, which talks with the smart locks, so the guests can open the door through their guidebook. And so if you're interested in learning more, hostfully.com, and you can chat with any of us, and we'll be more than happy to give you a tour of the suite.
Fantastic. Awesome stuff. And we've been working with Hostfully how many years now? Many, many years. So yeah, like
we like Charge Automation very much.
yeah, absolutely, not like vice versa. So yeah, it's great partner to work with. Okay, so let's jump into things. Let's talk about why upsell and protection strategies and why they actually matter. Austin, I'm going to pass it over to you actually because I've been doing a lot of talking up to now, and I think I think you need to jump into things.
Getting a little hoarse, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, no, of course, a big piece of the puzzle here when everyone's looking to engage their guests, generate more revenue, upselling is definitely like that big piece of it. So the big thing is a lot of customers are talking about offering some sort of upsell. Either they're doing it for free or they are maybe doing it a bit manually. A guest calling in or messaging, they're offering it. So the big thing is upsells are a great opportunity to really impress your guests with a lot of different options for them to help improve their stay. So you're going to drive a lot of extra value by giving a spread of options to them. Even if they're not going to purchase them, they still might be really cool things like, oh, I could get a massage if I wanted to. These are all different pieces to add to the overall impression that you're giving to your guests. Mm-hmm. Making sure that, and I think we'll dive a little bit deeper into upsells, but really there's a lot of value added when you're offering those upsells, not only you as the property manager generating more revenue, but that perception to the guest. And of course, deposits, making sure that you're wanting to generate more revenue, but you also want to make sure you're protecting that revenue. So making sure that you do have security pieces in place, like security deposits, like ID verification, all these different pieces. This helps make your guests more trusting of the process, making you look a bit more professional in your flow, and making sure that we're moving through this experience together and building that relationship. And then, of course, making sure that we're giving them the option as well of doing a security deposit or a damage waiver. These are more options for your guest to better engage them, making sure that they get to choose what they like to choose, because most of the times these guests they're doing these types of trips often, right? So they've done this song and dance before. And of course, making sure that we do have that damage waiver in place to help reduce that friction, to produce better behaved guests. And that's another big thing we can talk about as we dive into things.
Yeah, we were talking about that just earlier right now, actually talking about better behaved guests. So that's something that's always a tricky thing. Definitely. No, great stuff. I don't know, Fred, anything to add on this side? Because I know this is obviously upsell on the upsell side. Hopefully, you offer the same option. And of course, yeah, with the whole topic of protection strategies, like you said, the whole notion of better behaved guests is something we're all after as property managers. It's a really tricky thing, and it's a fine balance as well. You don't want to stress them out, you don't want to overcharge them, but you also want to make sure that you protect yourself as a host.
Absolutely. So offering 2 tracks to the guest right at check-in is a great way to precondition them that you're here on vacation, but you do have to be somewhat responsible. Mm-hmm. And so the security deposit, we offer that as well in our product, but sometimes it can be a sticking point at the conversion stage of the booking. And so maybe that's where the waiver can come in, which is where Charge Automation really shines. So you kind of have to sync up offering both strategies with your average daily rate and your type of guest persona. So that's what I always talk about when I talk about upsells, but it applies for waivers and deposits. So if your typical booking is a week-long vacation and it's like $1,000 a night, perhaps the security deposit is not such a big amount of money compared to the amount of money that they've already put down for the vacation itself.
Yeah.
But let's say it's like a lower ADR and a shorter stay, but you do have high friction guests. Maybe that's where the waiver can be a better option. So the same thing with upsells, the same thing with deposits and waivers. You just whatever we say in this webinar, you need to apply it to your situation. Typically, it's going to be the guest profile that you're reaching. So you have to just be mindful of that. So you can get a lot of really good information through surveys and post-booking messaging flow, just to see the type of person they are and what they enjoyed about the property. And then again, like the property itself. So some properties just don't lend themselves well to upsells, period, and they don't lend themselves to waivers, and you just have to go with the security. So whatever we say in the next couple of minutes, just bring it back to like what your experience is. But within this, there is a lot of room to play and to implement all those strategies.
Do you know what? You mentioned a really good point, and I think that leads very, very well into the next slide that we got here, and that is, understanding what's going to work with your audience. And it's something we talk about with every client that we talk to here at Charge Automation, and I'm sure it's going to be the same with the clients with your clients at Hostfully. Many of them are going to ask the same question. Well, what upsell should I be selling? What is it I should be putting on there? And having the right strategy for the right client, also the right demographic or the type of client as well. You're going to have multiple demographics. You're going to have couples. You're going to have business travelers. You're going to have families. Each one of those is going to want a completely different set of upsells. So being able to kind of dynamically provide those specific upsells for that particular demographic, that's going to help you increase those conversions. So I'll let you carry on, Fred, because obviously you mentioned you want to you wanted to mention this stuff here, and we've talked about it earlier. So cool. I can carry on here and take.
So Upsells has a very special place in my heart. Not only because it's part of what we offer in our software, but I always look at ways that the property manager or the host can increase their revenue without always playing with the daily rate, right? And at one point, you're going to cap out on how much you can charge and the amenities that you're that you want to put in to get more daily rate out. Mm-hmm. And this is where the upsells really shine. And if you can just follow with me, do some back of the napkin calculation. Let's say your ADR is 150, 60% occupancy rate. That gives you 4.5 nights a month. 2,700 monthly revenue for that property. You only take 15% of that home, so it's $400 or so. Now let's say you can upsell an early check-in on 3 of those 4 reservations. That's $120 that you're not sharing with the property owner, right? Again, do some calculation on that. That's about a 20% increase to your revenue from something that we're going to see how we can do that later. You can automate. And so I looked at that, and we went back in our platform and we pulled all the transactions that happened in a year in 2024, just to give some insight to property managers, what they can charge their guests. And if you want to read the report, it's at hostfully.com/upsells. But what are people selling to guests? So if you look at the amount of transactions, and this isn't like it's like what's actually generating revenue for property managers. Most popular is the early check-in and late checkout. So those kind of 50% of everything that gets sold are those 2 things. But the interesting ones are the pet cleaning fee and the pool and spa heating or access. So those are kind of like the big 4 that generate the most transactions. And then if you look at the gross revenue, so what people are actually charging, like what makes the most money, again, it is the early check-in and late checkout, but the pet cleaning fees, people charge a huge amount of money for that. And I'm not quite sure, again, I've never charged pet cleaning fees, but just having cleaned properties myself, it's not that much more to clean the property. So you are getting quite a bit of upsell. And this depends on your market and how much you pay for energy, but the spa access and the spa heating or the hot tub heating is another good way to get some extra revenue. Typically, what we've seen in our data on what people charge for an early check-in is about $40 for an early check-in and about $37 on the late checkout. So one's a bit more valuable to the guest than the other. And then I just won't go into like all that data. It's not the point of this entire presentation, but if you're interested, you can read that report. But there's ways to automate these things. There's ways to train your staff on how to handle them when they come in. There is a little layer of complexity that gets added to your business with upsells, but to me, 20% extra revenue, it's worth looking into depending on, again, your type of property, what you offer. If you're offering a extremely high-end luxury property, maybe asking $50 for the early check-in is not going to resonate well with your guests, right? But somewhere where there's like a conference happening and you're in the middle of a city, and people typically, the flights arrive at a certain time, and you can get that early check-in, that might be something you'd want to consider. So again, we're just trying to match the property with the guest persona and the amount of money. It's kind of like that perfect little triangle of upsells that we're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned, by the way, the pet fee. We don't charge a pet fee, but we have a pet penalty because we don't permit pets, unfortunately, for allergy reasons. But yeah, I totally get that. And like you said, the cleaning isn't necessarily more, but obviously pet owners are willing to pay that. Another interesting one is on taxis. Taxis is a huge upsell. But again, we tend to have holiday vacation rentals on my property. So it tends to be that people, they arrive, especially the type of demographic we have, they buy the cheap flights in, which of course are going to land at 12 o'clock at night. We're not around. But of course we can pre-arrange a taxi for them. And we have, and what's very important as well is regarding upsells, it's very important to forge really strong relationships with local businesses and local partners, because you can very much work closely with those local partners. Such in our case, we offer breakfast now. We have a restaurant which we have a deal with. We've worked a deal out. We offer that now as an upsell. It's actually fairly popular now. Funny enough, during the summer it wasn't popular at all, but now off peak we are getting a lot of upsells on breakfast. But additionally, on the taxi side of things, that's probably one of our biggest upsells, and we earn a 10% commission on that side. So you can imagine you're ferrying people back and forth. So again, as you said, Fred, I think knowing the demographic, the type of persona, where you're located, it's easy to kind of work it out. You just need to understand who your guests are, and as your property manager, you have that data in the palm of your hand.
Absolutely.
So,
and if I can just add one tip, because you did mention working with external vendors.
Yeah.
It's the concept of trust but verify. So if you're working with someone new, don't forget that you're associating your brand with that particular vendor.
Yeah.
For the guest, it doesn't really matter if it's two different companies. For them, it's one experience, right? It's their vacation.
Precisely.
And they've worked all year for that. So if you are offering a taxi service and it's an individual, maybe go in their taxi and take that ride with them. If you're offering breakfast, or if you're offering like a scuba tour, maybe meet the people that you're offering that service through. And then once in a while, it's also worth checking in with the guests, like how did it go with that particular vendor? Maybe once a year or twice a year sort of thing. You just want to make sure that your brand is associated with that particular experience, and because that can then come back and get you in the repeat bookings or the direct bookings at the end.
100%. Yeah.
So yeah, trust and verify is what I always.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
The taxis is a tricky one. We've often have issues with that one, but unfortunately, you're limited to who you can work with where we are. No, yeah. Great stuff. There's some really, really good points there, Fred. I think what we want to do now is, because we've spoken about kind of the types of upsells, and I think what's important now is the timeline for upsells as well, when to offer these features. We've used this slide before because I think it really does divide it into those three stages. You have the before, the during, and the after. And the upsells, the type, it completely changes throughout that timeline, and it's important to be able to adapt accordingly. You start at the beginning, with the damage waiver, damage deposit collection. You, of course, have any pre-arrival upsell opportunities, which might be, for example, in my case, food packages, might be the early check-in, etc. You're going to want to offer all those little tidbits. The taxi service, we just spoke about that now. And during their stay, you tend to migrate into activities that the guests might be kind of getting on with, tours, bicycle rental. And you mentioned, sorry, Fred, I'll hand back to you again, because you mentioned you had quite a few in this, and you mentioned that this is something that you're very kind of passionate about, this kind of line of Hostfully.
Well, yeah, it does fit into the strength of a PMS like Hostfully, where you can send out all sorts of custom messaging flows to your guests. right from the minute that they book a reservation, right? So again, what I always preach is, if you have a software like ChargeAutomation, the guidebooks, or Hostfully, the guidebooks, is always in all your messages, try and get the guest to open a link to that guidebook, right?
Right.
Because then they're getting used to opening that link, number one, and answering their own questions, because all the information should be in there if you've designed your guidebooks in a certain way. But then anytime I open something cool like a guidebook, I'm going to be clicking around. And then
Yep.
what's going to be in the things that you're going to be clicking around? It's going to be the marketplace. So right there, it just shows that you're not just dealing with a mom and pop Airbnb, you're dealing with a vacation rental or a short-term rental management company that is professional and has all these things. And you're also increasing, every time you're opening the guidebook, you're increasing the odds that you're going to get a conversion early on without even getting your staff to promote that upsell. So there's pre-arrival, the upsells, and again, you're going to be upselling the early check-in and maybe the parking and things like that. During the stay, you're probably going to be offering the tours and the experience and things like that. And then after the departure, you can even have a module in your guidebook or your upsell platform where you're offering for a repeat stay or like something like that, a gift card maybe for a family member. So you can get very creative, and it's about inserting those opportunities as much as you can in your messaging flows, of course, without being too pushy.
Yeah, absolutely. The last point is very important as well, because you can overwhelm guests entirely. They're on a holiday; they want to relax. Don't send too many messages. It's genuinely, I've made the mistake, by the way. I got quite a little bit overexcited when I first started out. So, pushing too many messages, and people said they sent so many messages, and I actually got. I dropped in the customer reviews from one person saying, I was spammed while I stayed there. Yeah, I thought, okay, let's tone it down a little bit. And I did apologize. And they revised the review, which was good. So that was a positive thing. No, great. No, that's a really good point. And like I said, so the key thing here, I think, just to sum up and everything, is obviously make sure you understand your target audience and each of the personas that stay with you. And again, you have that information to hand as a property manager. All that information is there. The second part is obviously making sure you time your upsells correctly. It's really, really key to do that. And think about what they want before, during, and after their stay. And when I say after their stay, it is important to say thank you. It is important to send those reminders to say, hey, book direct and come back with us. And booking direct is obviously going to save you a whole lot of money avoiding the OTAs. You want to do that. And platforms, like ours, they allow you to do that, which is absolutely key. And that saves you a huge amount over the course of the year. So I guess the next one is...
Hold on, Nick. One last thing I just want to mention quickly.
Yeah, tell me.
Is the whole idea, because we're talking about this idea of having a ton of different upsells and not overwhelming the guest and trying to pick unique ones that are specific to their stay. Another big thing that we're able to do with Hostfully is we sync the calendars.
Right.
So we can have an early check-in only show up if you're able to offer that early check-in, if there's enough space ahead of time. So this is a really cool way. We have these automations in place that you don't even have to think about, oh, which one should I pick and choose? We can just kind of set this up for you. So then automatically you're offering relevant and available upsell for your guests, which converts better and helps the guest. I'm assuming, Nick, you used to probably offer upsells, and then the guest's like, yeah, I want that upsell. And you go, well, actually, we can't offer that.
Yeah.
That's the only thing the guest is thinking about now is that upsell that they didn't get, right? And that's
exactly. And another thing I want to add on that as well, I think we need to move on because obviously we're running out of time here. But there is one other very important thing, and we obviously in that whole process, you can actually make the request, so nothing is charged to the customer at the time.
True.
As soon as you charge a customer, you've paid commissions, and you've also upset the customer as well at the same time, because if you have to say, oh, sorry, that there is no late checkout or early check-in, we've charged you, we're going to have to process a refund. That bothers the customer loads of the guests, a huge amount. The really cool thing that we have as well is we will pre-authorize the amount. So you just cancel that pre-authorization. There is no charge to the customer. You can move on. Customer, the guest is happy. They have their funds in the bank, etc. And only if that is available, and only if the system comes up and says, hey, we have that availability for that late checkout, early check-in, you can approve it. and the charge goes through, which is really great. It's a nice way to kind of manage things, and it saves you, the host, a huge amount of commissions because there is no charge for a pre-authorization. So it's important to note that as well. So really, really good points there. Okay, I'm going to just quickly mention to anybody listening, we have quite a few listeners actually today, so that's great. But I want to say, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them right now. We're going to carry on to the next topic, which is a big one, which is about damage deposits and waivers. And here's a stat that I found out. And again, it's obviously representative on a global scale. But at the end of the day, 77% of hosts don't collect a deposit or damage waiver at all, which is mad. Sorry, I'm going to say, as a property manager, I think that is absolute lunacy. You are putting yourself at risk. As you know, if you're renting out properties, it's important to protect yourself. Unfortunately, most of our guests are wonderful people and they look after our property. But there's always that unfortunate few that don't take care of the property, and they will cause issues and they will give you a headache. And if you're not protected, it can cost you financially a huge amount. So it's absolutely key to be ready on this. So I think that the whole topic here is talking about damage deposits, which is the more traditional model, but also damage waivers, which is an alternative to deposits. It's slightly different here. Waivers are a fee that you charge. It doesn't get returned to the guest, and essentially it buys the guest an insurance. So if they damage something, that is their insurance policy to say, that amount, that basically what we're saying is that amount covers the damages. And generally speaking, you have two choices on a damage waiver. You can either keep those funds and store them as an insurance pot, let's just say, which can also drive revenue at the end of the day. So you can essentially, once the pot has reached a certain amount, you have a threshold you feel that you can work with, you can then use that as a revenue stream, which is really great. But it also means that you have a pot there to cover any damages. And it's an interesting one. We were talking about this earlier, Austin, in a meeting. Just now, probably about half an hour ago. It's an interesting balance. What do you do? Do you do a damage waiver? Do you do a deposit? And I think it very much depends on the demographic and the type of property you're aiming at here. So just hand over to you, Austin, because obviously, it's mentioned too.
Well, yeah, the whole idea about damage waivers as well is like you can have either an option where you are kind of taking this insurance and having a little bit of money to offset any overall costs. You can do this two ways, either building your own fund or using a third party and claiming against it. So you kind of have access to a big pool of money, but you have to do some claims. So there's some options there to pick a damage waiver process that works the best for your company. Now, if you're doing a little bit of that, damage waiver, if you're doing the deposit, you can see a different behavior from your guests as well, right? Like the whole idea that a damage waiver, you're kind of collecting that money up front. What I've heard, at least from other property managers, is that, a security deposit is helpful because the guest is mentally aware that you have some of their money versus you paid them money. So depending on your demographic, just like you said, Nick, it really can depend on trying to get into the mind of the guest and what's going to work and perform the best across your portfolio.
Exactly. I think the key thing here is tend to find that waivers tend to work better, probably in scenarios, for example, if you have short-term boat rentals. I've seen those before, actually, interesting enough, that you get them down here in the port. But even kind of maybe in villas, etc., you tend to find that tends to work. It could work better, but it's also down to the guest itself. The downside to waivers, and both have their pros and cons. The guest may feel like, well, I paid my insurance, I don't care if I break something. But again, it's a fine balance. A damage deposit can be fairly large in some cases. I mean, for example, I charge 150 euros. I know other guests can charge up to 500 euros depending where you're staying, and that could be a very, very large sum of money. You're staying at a villa, you're being charged $500 a night, whatever it might be. I don't know if that's a lot. If 500 euros over here, and the deposit could be one night. And so you're staying, 5 nights, it's $2,500. Then you're on to $3,000, and that is money that's held, you can't touch that money. And in some cases, in my case, for example, you tend to find that some of the guests that stay say, hey, that's my holiday money you're using up. And it's like, well, unfortunately, we have to take this to protect ourselves. So it is a fine line. Whereas on a damage waiver, people might feel like, okay, that's fine, I'm already accepting this. Or they can choose through the upsell to purchase that damage waiver and say, okay, that's fine. And they can move on and carry on with their holiday without worrying the whole time. And we've even had people contact us halfway through the holiday saying, can you release the deposit? I've run out of money. So,
Wow.
yeah, really. And I can imagine that happening even more often when you have a big villa. Like I said, it can be very painful because that deposit will be more than likely at least a day's rent, I'd imagine, in many cases. So if you're staying a week, that could be very, very pricey. So I think it's important to be able to balance those two things out. So the good thing, I don't know, Freddie, if you have anything to add to this at all, sorry, because both Austin and I are chatting away here.
Yeah, no, just the other part is educating your guests.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like a long sermon, but people are typically very aware of what a security deposit is, that you will get that money back provided everything went well.
Right.
The waiver might require something a little different in terms of your messaging. It doesn't have to be a whole paragraph, but just mentioning that this fee that you're going to pay, whether it's a couple of dollars or euros, it is non-refundable. Like you're buying protection for your stay, right? And I think you just don't want to be getting involved in a situation where the holiday ends, they go back home, they're like, hey Nick, why didn't you send me back like my 20 euro waiver that I've paid? Because they're confusing with a deposit. So
Yep.
It just has to be explained at the right time in the right way. That can be part of your messaging flow when you're asking for that. But I do think there is a way to, or there's an importance in making sure the guests understand that that's what's happening with their money.
Right. No, exactly. The other thing I want to add as well is it's important to note that even if you do take a damage waiver, there are a lot of insurance policies out there that you can take out per stay. So that protects you as well. So whilst you might not have the full coverage, so for example, instead of, I personally, I wouldn't recommend saving up a pot because it can be very easy not to have if you haven't quite got enough to cover yourself. It can be painful at times. So there are a lot of insurance policies out there that allow you to essentially pay an amount which is covered by the waiver, and then that will cover you anything up to $50,000, 50,000 euros, whatever it might be. And then you obviously make the claim that way. The downside is it's time consuming. So again, I think in many cases, a deposit will, look after you up to a certain point. Let's say in the instance, 150 euros in my case. And you also have that leverage on the guest. You always make sure you have that leverage to say, hey, the guest wants to have their money back, so they might behave better. On the other hand, with the waivers, you might have a much higher threshold of protection, but on the downside, guests might abuse that thinking, well, I'm covered. I don't care if I break the TV remote. I don't care if I knock the TV over, whatever it might be, because I am covered. So it's important that both guests are aware you have policies in place to protect yourself in that case. So both have their pros and cons. Let's move on to the next slide, because again, I'm very conscious of time. We could talk on and on and on. And I guess it sums up everything here. So the key thing, deposits, it offers a strong protection for owners. You have those funds straight away. You have that leverage. You can say, if you break something, we're going to take it out of the deposit. So people tend to behave better. It's also very familiar. I think everyone is familiar with the whole concept of a deposit. You pay a deposit, you behave, you get your money back. If you break something, a little bit is going to be taken away. But as I mentioned earlier, it ties up guest funds, and that can actually sour the guest experience, especially if those deposits are very large. And also, the one point I was going to say is you tend to get disputes. Believe me, every time I've charged, I had to charge, what was it? I think I had to charge for a water jug, and it was, they smashed it. We put another one, they smashed it again. We're like, right, we're charging you this time. And they disputed €5, and it was just like, oh, for goodness sake. So it's the time and effort you have to go through to do this. On the other hand, waivers, it's much lower friction. And I think that's the key thing here. They know what they're paying. It just goes through. Whatever gets charged, and that's the end of it. And it's a lot more peace of mind. So I think you just need to balance it. You need to kind of think what is best. The key thing here is that, using ChargeAutomation, you can actually use both. So you have the option. And I believe, in Hostfully, you have similar options as well. And I think the final point is making sure, and I put this point underneath, is being transparent with guests. make sure you explain each option, which you've already mentioned as well here, Fred, and provide a choice. So you can choose maybe, if you want to offer a damage deposit or potentially a damage waiver. So they have the choice at that moment in time. Austin, I don't know, Fred, anything else you want to add to this?
Well said, Nick. I think we can change slides.
Let's do it. Let's finish up.
Get to the question.
So so to sum, I think, look, we've spoken about two topics here: upsells and deposits and waivers. I think the key thing here, upsells is a big thing for all hosts, and I think you just really need to get into it. If you are a property manager, make sure you have upsells. It is a source of revenue waiting there at your fingertips. And ultimately, if you don't touch it, you're leaving revenue untapped. So, using platforms like ours, it enables you to offer those upsells to your guests. And make sure you do it, just do some research, understand who your guests are, make sure you offer the right upsells at the right time, and you will see a growth in revenue, no doubt. And the key thing here is protecting yourself in the process. If you don't have a deposit or a waiver, I strongly suggest you do this. When it goes wrong, it can go wrong very, very quickly, and it can be very costly. And as we know, property managers, we have properties, but their profits aren't always as big as you might imagine. So at times, you've got to make sure you can cover yourself. If a property is damaged, you lose revenue while it's out, while it's being repaired. It costs you. So you can't rent that property. Making sure you're covered in every way is absolutely key here. So if you want to talk more about this, reach out to Austin, reach out to Fred, and we can tell you a lot more about it, and we can offer you tools that can help you fix these issues. So I think that sums things up. Let's do some questions. Let's see what we have here, actually. We have 5 people on the call, and I'm going to ask somebody here to ask a question. We have nothing right now. Would anyone like to ask any questions regarding those topics or anything else regarding the platforms, in fact? We're going to get radio silence.
Uh-oh.
Fred, I've got a question. I'm going to ask it right now, actually. So basically, I mentioned the two options, so the deposits. So when you go through the whole flow with Hostfully, you can offer those to guests straight away. So it's part of the whole check-in process for guests. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we'd include it in our automation messages that we send right at the time of booking. So you can include the links to your marketplace directly in there, or you can format whatever email or message that you send with HTML. So basically creating like a beautiful email that if you don't want to just include a link and you want to include an image that has text, you can create all those things in the PMS and make a beautiful experience for the guest. We do have the functionality for collecting the security deposits directly, so the more traditional approach to protecting your property. And then when it comes to waivers, the solution in Hostfully would be to charge that and pay for an insurance provider for per stay protection. Or like Nick said, if you want to create your own pool, you can do it that way as well, with the same risks that Nick discussed. And then that would be also like an upsell that you would charge through the guidebook marketplace feature. So, we're 2 different companies. We have overlapping products, but we can offer the same type of complementary overlap. And we do have a lot of customers that choose to do all this through ChargeAutomation. And then we have customers that choose to do all this through the Hostfully products. It just really depends on the other add-ons that you want to do in your business. So if you're leaning more, if you're already a ChargeAutomation customer, maybe you just choose that software solution for all your needs. So it just depends where you are in your journey in technology and property management.
Awesome. No, thank you, Fred. That sounds good. That makes sense. And Austin, on the, I wanted to also ask as well. So obviously we have on the upsell side, in terms of getting started with upsells, we, really the templates that we have. I mean, there are a number already that are available that we can actually get set up, right? So in other words, if a property manager wants to get started, is it straightforward to do so? I mean, is this something you've got to kind of set up, you've got to kind of configure, or what's the process in doing so here?
Yeah, it's really easy. We have, like you said, these templates, so you can kind of throw them in there and get going and start generating revenue pretty instantly. we'll already connect your payment processor. So normally it's Stripe, but if it's any others, we can. So then it's directly using your Stripe account, depositing directly into your accounts. And then the only thing that your team has to do is you get a notification that an upsell has been purchased, then you're just executing on it. You don't have to go back and forth. Okay, here's how much it is, send over a payment link. All that stuff is done. You just now have to execute on it. And we can also edit. I think I mentioned earlier about like syncing with the Hostfully calendar, making sure that we kind of set up those automations. So an early check-in, for example, only shows up when you want it to show up in it. It's actually possible for your team to deliver on that upsell.
Awesome, that's great. And I assume it's the same thing. And hopefully, like I said, I presume you'd have like little templates there, or just let's say upsell presets that clients can use. So it's a similar thing. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say, it's super easy to get started on this stuff. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or an IT geek to do this. So really, really good there.
Nick, if I can just give advice on getting started. We talked about a couple of tips earlier in the presentation, but the other one I would advise people, if you're still unsure about all this and you have one of the two products and you want to test it out, it's perfectly fine to start with just one property, see how that looks in your business, and then scale that out, right? I think sometimes we look at like, oh my God, I have to do this for like 20 different properties or 40 different and like, how are the staff going to coordinate all those things? Maybe just start with one and then build it out. And maybe, if you're charging, if you're liking upsells with the early check-in and you're thinking of branching out to something like a pantry service where there's food, so maybe start with just the properties in the east side of town that you manage, and then have your staff create SOPs and workflows and those kinds of things. And then, now we've learned our lesson. After like a month or two of offering, maybe we're going to offer it in the west part of town. So it's not all or nothing with these things. And I'm sure everyone in the call, they started their journey with just a few properties and they expanded to where they are now. So it's the same thing with upsells, right? It's not because you're at 50 now that you just need to start offering 50 times breakfasts and taxi service and, upselling tours, and just start very small, let your team learn how this all works. And then, you can scale that afterwards with the lessons learned.
I think that's actually probably one of the most important points you made in all of this. I think there's a big fear in setting anything like this up, and you can just start with the one, and you'll see very quickly the positive impact it brings. I think in many cases, and I'm going to say that from personal experience, there is a fear of just hitting that on button and thinking, is this going to work? So starting with just one is a great way to go forward. We do have a question, by the way. Facundo, he has a question here, and I thought I'd throw it on the screen, and anyone can jump into this one. So when I guess that's an upsell, ChargeAutomation or Hostfully, it doesn't get processed as a charge, but it works as a hold. When does it actually get charged? And I, the PM, do I have to do it manually? I'm going to throw this one over to you, actually. I think it's probably better.
Yeah. I think there's two pieces to this. So you can set up an upsell that right as they purchase it, it's instantly taken. And that can be like a parking, something that you're always able to offer that you don't have to kind of check in with your team. If you want to put a request feature on an upsell, then yes, what we'll do is we're going to create a hold on that credit card for that upsell request. So then it's kind of in limbo until your team then reviews to see if you can offer that upsell or not. Then if your team does say, yeah, we can offer this upsell, then we'll collect that money. And then if you say, well, actually, you know what, with the schedule, we cannot offer this upsell today, we're going to have to say no to this, then that hold releases automatically. So there's no manual step in releasing it, but your team, Facundo, would have to pretty much give that thumbs up or thumbs down to that requested upsell.
Awesome. No, that sounds good. So Facundo, hopefully that answers the question there for you. Unfortunately, I haven't got any other questions. So I do appreciate that, Facundo. That's appreciated. I guess at this point, what I'm going to say is we spent a little bit of time talking. We've been here for 45 minutes, believe it or not. But what I will say is that we're all available here on LinkedIn. If you want to post any questions you have on this session, please do feel free to post them on there. Fred is keeping an eye on things, so am I, so is Austin, and pretty much all the teams on both our ends. We're keeping an eye on the LinkedIn channels. So if you do have any questions, feel free to post them on the channel. I'm going to finish up about how to learn more. We're going to finish up on the QA session. Just let's talk about how to reach out to us. So both of us can be reached out by using the links that's shown on the screen here. You can scan the QR code to get more information. That takes you straight to those links that you can see on page. So use your phones to scan those now. There's also a very special offer that we're offering. So on our side, if you sign up, you get 3 months free on any annual charge automation plan. So if you sign up to our Essentials or our Pro plan and you sign up on annual, you get 3 months free of charge. If you mention that you came to the Hostfully stream, make sure that you were an invite on there. Also, on the side of Hostfully, they're offering up to $1,000 of savings, and that's onboarding and various other services. Actually, Fred, I'll let you pitch this one.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot, actually.
Just don't want to promise something.
Exactly.
That's all good. So it's $1,000 off onboarding if you book a demo and switch to Hostfully from another PMS. So join the Hostfully family, and we'll talk about waiving some of the fees that are involved in switching over to a PMS.
Amazing. All right, that sounds fantastic. Well, listen, I think that's really awesome. And I was going to say, so make sure when you do actually speak to us, make sure that you let them know that you're on a Charge Automation live session, and that way you'll get your discount and your offer. And in the meantime, I think that's it. Fred, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. I hope you'll come back again. We'll do another chat on a different topic, or maybe the same topic again. Once we know a little bit more about all these things, we're always learning. That's the main thing. Austin,
Right.
Thank you as always.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for putting this on.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, you're very welcome, guys. Well, listen, thank you so much, guys. Please do reach out to us if you've got any questions, and we'll look forward to seeing you again at the next Charge Automation live session.